Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the 817 podcast. EJ, how are you doing?
Doing good. It's about to get hot this week. They're looking at, 3-degree weather all week. The not-so-great people at ERCOT said they can handle it. They said they got us this time. We don't have to lower our AC.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's going to, we started hitting 100 degrees yesterday, Saturday, I guess, and now we've got some 103 coming at us, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Stay at home, stay inside, stay hydrated. Yeah, I
have
don't
your
know.
Bags ready just in case.
That's right.
Airbnb on speed dial.
That's right. I don't know if I can trust ERCOT. I don't know if anybody can trust ERCOT.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so today, I guess, as usual, we're going to be breaking down stories, slowish, not anything crazy this week going on, but we're going to hit a couple things. But I think the main thing we want to hit is going back to our loss last week, which we mentioned, but we really didn't see the effects of yet, was the positivity rate for Tarrant County hitting over 10%. And now that is actually impacting people, entrepreneurs, artists, people we love in Fort Worth, as events are starting to get canceled, from Spark Fest with the amphibian stage, the Kindness Duck, which I know you were pumped for.
Yeah, it was the only plan we had for this weekend was to go see the rubber duck, and all the unvaccinated losers that live in Tarrant County ruined it for us.
Yeah, and the breakdown what the duck thing is for people who maybe not know what we're talking about. What was it, and kind of what's the initiative?
It's the world's largest rubber duck, and I don't know a ton about it. I just know that they take it around to different cities and
It promotes kindness.
Yeah, and do big events around
concert.
it. Yeah, Lou Charles was supposed to play, right?
Yeah.
And that got canceled. So I think it's supposed to come back in October. But yeah, go get vaccinated if you haven't. Maybe if you have, go get a 4th or 5th or I don't know how many shots.
Yeah. What's your take? So take me on the path of what do you feel about these events being canceled? What do you feel about the positivity rate? And then also people aren't going to get vaccinated. They're just, it is what it is, it seems.
Yeah. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in vaccination rate nationally over the last few days, which is a positive sign. And I think the reporting on this is very sensitive and tough because it can't really be captured in a headline. And what I mean by that is this is now a pandemic of the unvaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you still might get it. It's similar to an annual flu shot where we don't know the efficacy of the flu. Sometimes the strains are going to be less or more resistant to vaccines. Sometimes they're not. And so you might get it, but you're not going to have a serious case of it. You're not going to be hospitalized. Even I saw in the NFL protocols, NFL players, if they test positive and are vaccinated and are asymptomatic, they can return to the team within 24 hours. So it's
and then I also saw something around maybe forfeiting. You're not allowed to forfeit if it's because of unvaccinated players. I don't know. What was I heard the whole DeAndre Hopkins thing. Now I know we're going off cuff of
yeah. The NFL basically said
he was going to retire
if you're not vaccinated and your team has to forfeit a game because they can't field a team, then you don't get paid. So a lot of players are showing their colors and showing whether or not they are vaccinated or not, or how seriously they're taking things. But yes, if you're vaccinated, there's still a chance, especially with Delta, that you're going to get COVID. It's still a significantly smaller chance than if you're not vaccinated. And the chance of you going to the hospital or having a serious case of this is essentially zero, statistically insignificant. So the gambit now is, how do we get people vaccinated? And what sucks is that this is starting to affect small businesses. Like, we had been rebounding really quickly and we saw our sales dip in the last week. Amphibian was trying to, really take a step out and do something that was like their normal programming and had to have it shut down. And, big community events like the Rubber Duck getting canceled or postponed. So I would, we're not like going to enter into something remotely similar to the other waves of the pandemic, especially if you're vaccinated. And like the UK is sort of on the other side of their Delta peak. And so we can look at them and see what happened with them. And I mean, it's really quickly falling back down again to the cases are dropping significantly very quickly. But it sucks that those who are vaccinated and those who have been responsible and taking this seriously, and especially kids, are continuing to have to pay the price for the ignorance and irresponsibility of adults.
Yeah. Not only is it that you're more likely to carry the Delta, you're also the less vaccinated people we have, the more mutation can happen. Right. You're basically a petri dish here.
That's how we got here.
Yeah. And it's like, it's individual decisions are impacting the group's freedoms. It's like you want the freedom to choose to have the vaccine or not, but now your decision is truly impacting everyone else. Yeah. And yeah.
Well, and the individual decision thing is a fallacy. Like libertarianism doesn't exist. Like you don't exist in a vacuum or a bubble. Your decision affects people around you everywhere, regardless of how you try to isolate yourself from the community. And so it's not an individual decision. Like you're making a decision that affects your community, regardless of how you want to try and remove yourself from that.
Yeah. Well, that's a bummer. And I hope we see this be something that's not happening more often.
Yeah. I think that this will be a pretty quick blip, like a month max, based on what the UK has seen. And then what I've been reading from a couple of doctors who have been leading the way is that realistically, Delta is probably significantly more in the community than we know at this point. Like, we're not at the front of a wave right now. We're like halfway through a wave, but because of all the vaccination, we haven't actually been able to detect that this has been coming for so long. So I think it'll be a quick blip, but still just something to be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next story, as I know we wanted to talk about some development and things that are going on that was just in the Sunday paper. And so it looks like Nettles and is already kind of on the move and working with, construction companies and development to provide affordable housing in the Hillside Morningside neighborhood just east of Interstate 35. Really crazy. I mean, building homes that are affordable, 175 to 225 range. And so, especially at a time where, the median home value is now higher than $300,000 in Fort Worth. It's interesting. And I like what he says, like what you said in the quote, it's not about gentrification, it's about revitalization. What is your kind of take here, as Chris Nettles also represents us? Again, he's city council member, District 8. So what's your take?
Yeah, I think this is awesome. It's a really great thing for the neighborhood and for that community. And a lot of the other things that they are working on in conjunction with this are like freezing property taxes for longstanding residents of the neighborhood so that they don't feel the effects of new higher, nicer homes coming in.
Yep.
And I mean, regardless of, the article says that these homes are not for the wealthy, they're for this community. Regardless, like, a new home is a new home. Like, it's going to be nice.
Yep.
It's going to be upgraded and updated and hopefully help breathe a lot of life into the area. So I think this is a really great thing for that neighborhood and that community. And it's, Chris Nettles really hasn't even had a city council to participate in yet, but you can already feel his footprint in the area and what he's trying to help come to District 8.
Yep. And looks like the homes are going to be slightly larger at 1,300 square feet. So Alpha Family Group has bought 8 or 9 properties in the area in the past 3 or 4 years and plans to buy about 10 more. The Tarrant Appraisal District records show that Alpha Family Group owns 4 vacant lots. So a lot of kind of just history. East Allen Avenue, Missouri Avenue, East Pulaski. So,
and I mean, this is something that needs to be happening nationally. Like, majority of their customers are first-time homeowners. Like, as a young first-time homeowner, either married without kids, married with 1 or 2 kids, like, you should be able to enter the home market at, $200,000 in that range. Like, that's something that is approachable for a large number of people. Whereas, I mean, that's just not realistic anywhere close to a city nationally anymore. Yeah. And you said it with, like, average home or median home value in Fort Worth over 300,000 now. Like, we were kind of one of the last areas where you could do that.
Yeah.
And so I think this could be something really good to be replicated in other areas of the city, especially in the, like, home developments out in Aledo and in Alliance that are, just plopping down these $500,000 houses. Like, how do we incorporate these types of homes into those neighborhoods to make them diverse and approachable and welcoming?
Yeah. So that seems to be a good story here, and something that we saw into Sunday's paper. So ready to kind of move to the big story? We're moving on this one. We're already 13 minutes. We're only 13 minutes in, and we're at big story.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about with
the big story,
this soccer complex. And careless Cary Moon is at it again with trying to bring this massive soccer complex to Keller. You've got the article in front of you. Do you want to read through some of the details?
So there's talks of building a new soccer venue in Fort Worth. It's looking in the next, I guess, 3 to 6 months, going to have some real pickup on the conversation. A lot of it's basically around how soccer is picking up as a sport, youth soccer, and also that we at Fort Worth, because we do not have a large soccer facility, we lose a lot of money for tournaments and things like that go elsewhere, a la Frisco, Dallas, and the city commission, the sport commission estimates that there's $72 million in economic impact. And so Mr. Moon's kind of take is how we need to capitalize on providing some value, because we're losing out on dollars because we don't have it. And all our youth teams and all the other people, really, we go out to those cities to get involved in youth soccer.
Yeah. So I'm a sports fan. I'm a big soccer fan. In a nutshell, the idea of a professional team coming to Fort Worth is very appealing to me. Now, if you're not familiar with the hierarchy in soccer, the MLS is the top pro league, and the U.S. is different from every other country's soccer league in that we don't have a promotion relegation system, meaning that the smaller leagues in other countries, if you win the league, you get to move up a level. It's something that drives a lot of competition. But in the U.S., thanks to capitalism, the name of the game is lock in the teams that are at the top and financially protect their interests. So when a USL championship team comes knocking, that's not a top level professional team. So like they're not going to have the draw that a professional franchise has, both in local interest, national interest, and national travel to games. So the USL doesn't interest me a ton. So that's also maybe a strike against this. Whereas you have the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, that is growing exponentially right now, continuing to expand into new teams and new markets, with diverse female-led ownership groups. Like, they're doing a ton of the right things. And it's a little bit annoying that we are talking to a second tier men's team over trying to get NWSL on the phone. But regardless of that, FC Dallas is located in Frisco. FC Dallas consistently has bottom 5 attendance in the MLS. It's not part of the city, and I think it's been proven across the country that when sports franchises aren't integrated into the city they're a part of, when they're stuck in the suburbs, when they're out of the way, like, they don't thrive. People don't go up to Frisco for FC Dallas games. So, of course, Fort Worth, as much as we try and knock on Dallas, we try and replicate a lot of what they do.
Our city's starting to look a lot like Dallas.
Yeah, and we're doing the same thing here, trying to potentially put a soccer stadium in a suburb, in a wealthier white suburb, that I can guarantee will not bring anything to the area. Like, the youth soccer stuff I buy into, like, travel sports are expensive. People are constantly on the move, bringing money to the areas that they're staying in, whether that's restaurants, hotels, jobs, you name it. Like, I totally buy into there being a massive market for youth soccer that Fort Worth is not a part of. But this is not the place to do it. We have a historic Farrington Field in desperate need of upkeep and a redo right in the middle of downtown. We have Dickies Arena that they're figuring out how to play lacrosse in. So, like, why can't they figure out how to play soccer in?
That's what my point was, too.
We've got, like, Texas Wesleyan started up their football program, and they don't really have a place to play. Like, if you've ever been over to Martin Field, the field isn't level. Like, they're playing football on a downslope. It's dangerous, and two, it's dumb. Like, how can we partner with Texas Wesleyan? There are other areas of the city with space screaming for economic development, and Keller is not one of them. Like, why could this not go into Gateway Park? Gateway is just a ton of empty land. The other piece is, this article talks a lot about how long-term this benefits Keller ISD.
Yeah.
So, like, we're going to take Fort Worth dollars, invest them into Keller ISD instead of investing them into Fort Worth ISD. Like, again, we're just continuing to run this same cycle of investing money in the wrong places and investing in white areas and leaving places that are largely POC, which we know how heavily POC Fort Worth ISD is, out to dry. And so, while the idea of this is appealing to me, the execution of this potential idea, to me, fails in every way, shape, and form.
Soccer now makes up about 16% of the commission's core sports, which also includes football, volleyball, and cheerleading. Much of that success comes from MoneyGram Soccer Park, a 19-field complex northwest of downtown Dallas. So 136% increase in the last decade based on hotel room nights. Just because soccer is becoming famous, what it also means is because America is getting more diverse.
Right. Well,
So it's
and
like-
also like we have a number of local soccer teams in Fort Worth that play on a semi-professional level, and like there's not that many people at Fort Worth Vaqueros matches. There's not that many people at FC Inocentes matches. Like just because you go up like one little level doesn't mean that we're going to like draw crowds and draw customer bases.
10,000 seat stadium
Yeah. And
called the Fort Worth Star. Heavens.
God.
I mean, gosh. Can we not get creative, people?
and it also, so in 2018, it cites Louisville as a concept for this. And guess what? League just expanded into Louisville, the NWSL. Like that's a much better target than a second tier, and a much better team for Fort Worth to rally around than a second tier soccer team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is they're talking about how it would bring as much as $16 million to the city, but for Frisco, having FC Dallas, Frisco only estimated that youth soccer only brought $2.6 million. So how are you going to estimate 6 to 5x? I guess 6 to 7x on estimates of what it would bring to Fort Worth, but yet,
Yeah.
how can you bring 16 million to us if you're seeing data to bring $2.6 million,
Right.
which is really nothing
Yeah.
to spend all that money on to build out there. And I'm really confused on the whole like the other part around it they were talking about, like shops, and I don't know.
Yeah, as you can see, it feels like it's a little early in these conversations, but that stuff has been forming around it for a while. But there are a lot of really big holes in this that need to be answered. And especially, like, again, and we talk about how, like, growth in Alliance isn't growth in Fort Worth. Like, in name, it might be growth in Fort Worth, but it doesn't actually mean growth in Fort Worth. And that's the same thing here. Like, growth in Keller doesn't mean that this is growth for, like, the city of Fort Worth. And it just feels like we continue to invest in the suburbs and are trying to become more and more of a bedroom community, despite what we might be projecting.
Yeah, I mean, Keller, if you go to Keller on a map and you just went lateral right until you got to Dallas, you would hit Plano.
Right.
Like, that's how far away it's from Fort Worth.
Yeah.
That's, to me, I actually think it would never happen, but Fort Worth needs to be broken up into like different cities. Like we talked about Alliance, Texas, Hazlet, Texas.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy how it creates so much power for the wrong things.
Yeah.
In our city.
Well, and like soccer, replace any sport with this. Like, there's a lot of money and tourism to be had in youth sports. But my biggest takeaway from this was that we are just going to continue spinning our wheels with investing money in white communities over black and brown communities. And that's ultimately, like, that's the goal of this article, is Cary Moon trying to get money invested in his school districts versus all of the need that we know we have in Fort Worth ISD. And even if that money is spent on Farrington Field, like, that's still downtown Fort Worth. That's Fort Worth ISD. Whether, I can't remember if they've sold it yet or not. But anyways, like, this is just another example, and like getting front page press of trying to further segregate the city, regardless of what we say about equality.
Yeah. And I think my frustration too is about, like, I mean, one, I'm not into soccer. Two, I would definitely not drive Plano length to go to a soccer game.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And like I'm the market for this, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
And but to me, what it talks to me, it just shows like we have to put more creative things on the table. The kicker he was trying to also sell was like this was going to be a way to get corporate tax dollars and stop relying on property tax. But I think this goes even bigger to the Fort Worth Report article by Kristen Barton, where they talked with Rep Kim Breimer about kind of how we lost Intel 20 years ago. Intel wanted to build a $3 billion plant, but due to high property taxes, they chose not to. But the kicker here is we don't have to go all the way back to 20 years ago. I mean, this is happening to us right now. The fact that Phoenix is the number one most like place people are going to buy a house and moving. Phoenix is not that special of a city. Like, I mean, from like maybe location from like LA and Vegas and stuff, maybe, but like they're winning because they also got Taiwan Semiconductor, which is kind of really growing as a company and expanding. They're putting 5 locations in Arizona, and all of this happened in the last 2 years. And so we're worried about soccer, things that like, how do we create economy when if we can somehow not lose, to Phoenix or other cities or compete to find these emerging companies that I feel like will really change this conversation for our city. But it's not going to be, soccer practices and snack bars and just these, really small basic level ideas that I just think aren't as creative as rather as finding emerging people to build here.
Yeah, I might disagree with you a little bit on that. Or maybe not even disagree, but my counter would be what's in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Packers.
Yeah.
They get a ton. I mean, that's their entire economy basically runs around like the Packers.
Yeah.
And so I do think that sports franchises.
And Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So you're going to see it become Cleveland Cavaliers really quickly.
Yeah. Well, okay, there's another example. Cleveland. Cleveland has two major sports franchises, and that's there. Same with Cincinnati, and
we're not talking about these kind of teams.
Indianapolis,
we would never have a Fort Worth team. Like we'll always be Mavericks and the Cowboys.
Yeah, but this is at least an opportunity for people to come. Like, sports drive tourism in a massive way, and I don't think that.
But that's the other conversation. Do we want to build a city based off tourism, or do we want to build a city based off of, I guess, relevance? And this, well, not relevance is a bad word. I guess I'm just saying is we rather build complexes rather than operating systems of the world, right? Like, we need semiconductors. We need cell phone devices. We need these things. And a lot of our strong companies today, railroads and things, I feel like we haven't got the new world of technology. Like, we have very strong traditional manufacturing and companies. And I guess I just feel like, I guess creatively thinking of revenue, I just don't know how a soccer complex, I guess all the way out there too, by the way. And I also just think I don't know a lot about the tourism space of why do we really want to be a city of tourism? That's New Orleans survives off tourism. Europe survives off tourism from rich Americans and Chinese who runs actual companies who actually run the world. And I just don't know you really want to be a New Orleans or people who rely off of that. Vegas, Vegas, no one hangs out on Saturday and Sundays in Vegas because they're all working industry for tourism. I feel like you want to create businesses that have relevance even if nobody's showing up.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, would you rather go to Portland or to Phoenix?
But Portland also does have great companies. I mean, they have a lot of tech companies. I mean, it's one of the 5, I would say, big talk about knowledge-based workers live there.
Okay, so would you rather go to New Orleans or Phoenix?
New Orleans or Phoenix?
Yeah.
New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you rather go?
But this is the same with, I agree, like San Francisco is like a big
yeah, I mean,
tech hub, but I would rather go to New Orleans than San Francisco.
Oh, I'd rather go to San Francisco for sure.
Yeah, I forget you like San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of our big cities are a balance, and that's a tier that like Fort Worth isn't going to get into anytime soon. But I mean, San Francisco's a smaller city than us, even though the Bay Area is obviously bigger even than DFW.
Yeah.
But like LA, New York, Chicago, even, I mean, the DMZ, DC area, like, those are all a balance, but something has to catapult you to there. And like, I mean, Seattle just obviously, kind of stumbled onto the gold mine of Amazon.
Microsoft.
But I don't.
Twilio, I think, is out there.
I think that
residents who live there, who have nice jobs with nice salaries because they have futuristic careers, spend money, that is more consistent than, I guess I feel like a city like that is what we need to get closer to. I think we're doing good on the tourist side, and I think we have enough of it. I just don't know if we should want to become I don't know how much we're relying on tourism right now, but I just feel like we need more of the other stuff. We're relying too much on tourism.
I
don't know.
I would heavily disagree with the idea that Fort Worth relies too much on tourism.
Yeah.
Because I think tourism kind of goes hand in hand with name recognition nationally.
Yeah.
And you probably have more people.
I guess does tourism come before the talent? I guess that's a good question. Is it a chicken and egg? Did Austin become Austin because it was touristy, and then smart and relevant companies wanted to show up? Or was it just naturally because, Austin had a university, so there was a lot of smart people, it had a creative scene, it had good eats. I mean, I guess I don't know if Austin qualifies as they have 6th Street, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Austin's case, the tourism came first. People wanted to
South by Southwest.
Yeah, people wanted to go and experience the culture of Austin, and then they said, "I want to live here."
Yeah,
and I think that's we were
no sports team.
Right now they have a soccer team though. Yeah. They the survey that Visit Fort Worth has going right now. I think that it asks does having a convention center, or does tourism bringing people here and exposing them to Fort Worth, is that a good thing?
Yes.
And yes. And that's you came to a convention here. You love the city. You said, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that's unless somehow an Amazon emerges out of Fort Worth, that's the path to getting people to come and live in the city. Yeah. It's not, 2,000 attracting a company that'll bring in 2,000 people at a time. You got to bring in 50 of those to raise the population by 100,000. Not even saying that that's what we want, but there's way more that goes into that than attracting people to come visit the city.
Yeah. I guess I think the kicker here is I think we're doing more of the tourism. We're doing that better than we're doing the other thing. We're doing tourism better than we're doing recruiting knowledge-based workers or companies. Humans and residents to choose to live in Fort Worth. But your argument here, the good argument though, is that tourism creates, like you said about me, it's the how we're making that happen. in a way. I guess it's like kind of where like we're going to get knowledge-based people by being a strong tourist destination.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying now. And I guess the reason I would say we're not doing tourism well is, like you mentioned, the stockyards. And like, if that's the thing, and realistically, most of the events that have happened at Dickies Arena right now, save maybe the gymnastics championships, are attracting a certain kind of person to come to Fort Worth that realistically, statistically, is not super welcoming, is not diverse, and maybe doesn't represent who we want this city, what we want the city to be well. And so if it's the Stockyards and Sundance Square that we're pitching to people, I don't know that we're getting the right kind of tourist, if that makes sense. And not to say that we don't want to attract those people. We want to be welcoming and open to everyone, but we're only putting things together that attract a certain someone.
Yeah.
So that's maybe why I say that we're not doing it well, is that right now, realistically, who are we going to be growing the city with?
Yeah.
People that are going to move out to Alito and Keller. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think that takes kind of that knowledge-based worker. And it'd be really interesting to stack our degrees and up to other cities. Like, you know,
it's
I think
bad. I saw.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I saw something about how undegreed Tarrant County is. I wouldn't be able to find it, or like don't know the number off the top of my head, but I remember reading it and being like, oh yeah, that's really poor.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think it was really good. And I think, it's just learning all about that from how does it all come together? Cause I think that's the kicker for me is I feel like the solution, like, give me this, like, would you say affordable, like a housing, like a knowledge-based worker tax that allows you to, as a first-time home buyer in Texas from out of state, you get a $5,000, $10,000 tax waiver. I don't know, something to make living here affordable. Does that bring knowledge-based workers more than like directly creating ideas and strategies around for these people rather than for tourists?
That's an interesting take on like Tulsa's incentive program. Because in reading about that, they talk about how a number of people use that $10,000 as part of a down payment on a home.
Yep.
So if we can kind of flip that and figure out how to, I mean, we give tax incentives to businesses all the time.
Exactly.
So if we can flip that, figure out how to give that to knowledge-based workers, then that is an interesting incentive, and one even that filters out a lot of people just like in understanding how to get it. You know, like that's a little bit of a confusing thing. And so how do you put that into verbiage that like is understandable and easily accessible to people? But that is a really interesting flip on, instead of just paying people $10,000 out of pocket, like, or does that just supercharge the housing market, which we already have an issue with? Or is it partnering with these apartment complexes for, 8 months of free rent that adds up to $10,000 or something? I don't know. I think that there are definitely creative ways around that to attracting knowledge-based workers.
Yeah, I think, my fear is just with tourism is creating an economy based off of throwing events is not necessarily bad, but the majority of the world is like that. Like tourism is their number one base because they have no indispensable skill set company that's there. Like, right, Taiwan Semiconductors in Taiwan, that economy has changed. That's a wealthy nation now, right? China would say it's a part of theirs. But anyways, I think so it's I think there's that mixture. And I think the soccer complex, going back to it though, I think like if you are a middle class parent, knowledge based worker, having a neighborhoods with beautiful community around, how you're going to create community around your friends. And so like if your friends playing soccer, if your kids playing soccer, and like there's a safe place and a nice place to compete in sports, that is important for long-term residents. But it's just interesting how the soccer complex, they're trying to pitch it as sports tourism, but then at the same time, maybe it is just also strong to pitch it as like for increasing the living experience of Fort Worth as a resident in that area.
Yeah. And
which that area doesn't need more increase in quality of life.
But then maybe you look at places like Detroit and Pittsburgh that thought that they were in a, bulletproof place of having manufacturing, and where are they now?
Exactly.
And so
it takes both.
Yeah, it takes both, and even just creating places that are long-term sustainable. Like it's hard to do that. Like who knows when in 30 years are these semiconductors going to be obsolete, and like what happens to Phoenix or Taiwan then.
Exactly.
So there's obviously a lot of adapting that has to happen there, but there are places that have gone all in on that and ended up in a bad spot too.
Exactly. Yeah. Nope. I think that's good. Well, we really would love to hear your thoughts on it and what you think. So if you have any thoughts on it, let us know. But let's move to wins and losses.
Yeah. My loss, and this kind of snuck up on us, is that the runoff for Texas 6 for the U.S. House of Representatives, voting's happening right now, and that is between the widow of Ron Wright, Miss Wright, and Jake Elzy, both Republicans. The Democrats kind of crowded themselves out of the initial race. That voting's going on right now, and honestly, like we both saw it in the paper and we're like, oh, I had no idea. And like, this is our representative, like we fall in this district. So the loss is that we're not excited about Republican versus Republican. Trump endorsed Wright, but right before the initial election happened. So take that for what you will on who to vote for. Apparently, Tarrant Dems or Texas Dems has been sending out messages saying vote for LZ, which either one of them is just going to fall in line with what the national GOP caucus says. But I personally will go with the person that Trump didn't endorse. But it's a take it for what you will type of thing. Yeah. Not excited about it.
Yeah, really not excited about it. So, but we'll see what happens from it. My loss was around some data that I just think was important. And it's really about how the hospitals in the area have seen a spike in opioid overdose among teens. And I just think it can kind of show what is the cause. You really don't. There's a lot of ways we could go with it. But the Cook's Children Medical Center has seen a spike. This is the stat that I just thought that was kind of powerful. So in 2020, Cook's Children's saw 16 patients for opioid ingestion overdose. 16 in 2020. We're already at 17 in May. So that's my loss, because I think, if anything, right, like helping kids, find meaning, find community, helping kids, especially with a year of online school and a lot of that. And heck, I think I'm all down for, the soccer complex, from like helping youth sports and kids being in sports. But the story just had a lot about, like, if you have someone in your life that you're worried about or concerned about, Cook's Children kind of just gave advice on what are some signs of opioid addiction. So a kid's isolation, change in friend groups, loss of interest in sports, schools, and hobbies, lack of motivation, declining grades, difficulty communicating, lower energy levels, change in appearance, aggressive behavior. So yeah, just really excited to get back to school for our students and moving past such a hard 18 months.
Yeah, and I think the loss going along with that is that we don't have a vaccine for under 12, and we really, I think I read a couple weeks ago that we probably won't until December, because for whatever reason the CDC wants like 6 months of data for kids versus we only needed like 2 for adults, which it's like, okay, like that's nice that we're trying to make sure that kids are safe, but if you have people eager to get it and we know that it works, then like let those people get it.
Yep.
I don't know. But it sucks that we're sending kids back into classrooms without masks, without distancing, putting teachers in a tough position again. And that this spike is happening like right when we're getting ready to go back to school.
Yep.
Yeah.
You want to move to wins?
Yeah. My win is that a prequel to the show Yellowstone is going to be filmed in Fort Worth. So Taylor Sheridan is the creator of the show, and he is, I think he lives in Mansfield. I don't know if he's like specifically Tarrant County, but he's from the area, lives in the area, and they are going to be shooting the prequel to the show here. So another really exciting and like large scale production coming to Fort Worth that'll be really high profile as well. If you are interested in being on the cast or crew as an extra, or if you are a PA and sound, anything that goes into a film production or a show production, they're doing casting calls. You can find all the information at the social media for Film Fort Worth, or if you're interested in being an extra, sign up with Legacy Casting at mycastingfile.com or email extras@legacycasting.com. And this is like a similar thing to the youth sports conversation of like, you don't know the direct impact that film production has on a community until you actually see it happen, where all these people, especially ones coming from out of town, are going to be like living either in a hotel or in an Airbnb or someone's guest bedroom. They're all getting food catered like at least once a day, sometimes up to 3 times a day. And that's coming from local restaurants. So there's just a lot that goes into this economically that makes it another big win for the area.
Yeah. Yeah. No, super cool, especially right after Mighty Orphans. This is already kind of getting some momentum. So kudos to the Film Commission and everything.
Yeah. Fort Worth was actually featured in, I think it was the Hollywood Reporter. Maybe it was a month ago now. Time is weird. But about how Fort Worth is up and coming as a shooting destination. And, you know, it takes people like Taylor Sheridan and David Lowery, really high profile people coming to the area, enjoying their time. And Hollywood is a very small, like intimate, tight knit community. And so once people start having good experiences, that gets shared a lot. And yeah, so it feels like we're really starting to take off with not just small things, but high profile projects.
Yeah. My win is the Olympics on. Have you been watching any of the Olympics?
I have a little bit. Yeah, baby's been waking me up a little bit early. And so the 4 a.m. wake up works with Japanese time zone.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jasmine Moore. She is 20 years old. She's the youngest of 3 women who will compete in the triple jump for the Olympics. and she's from Mansfield, and so she had a kind of a celebration for her, and I just think that's super awesome that we have people able to live their dreams. I mean, as an athlete, and you have a small window, and I know it was kind of what's going to happen. So really cheering for her, and proud of her for being from Tarrant County.
Yeah, super exciting. I think there's maybe like 6 or 8 athletes with TCU ties as well. So a lot of people with ties to the area over competing for the U.S. and Japan. And yeah, I love watching it. Looking forward to a couple weeks of just fun stuff that you don't get to see on TV year round.
Yeah. So yeah, well, thanks for this episode, people, and checking it out. If you're here all the way to the end, we appreciate you, and just super thankful. Tell a friend. What I'm going to do, because I feel like we were having such a great conversation around, what comes first, tourism, talent, and how does that work? And we briefly talked about Visit Fort Worth having a research link out right now. We're going to put that in the description because that's where I think you could share your opinion and take on tourism and how that works. But that was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We might be on maybe like a week break next week or 2-week break. We have just had some crickets when trying to line up interviews with people, and I'll be out of town, so we might be able to get something going.
We're going to brainstorm here.
Yeah,
what's going to happen?
We're going to figure out. So you might not hear anything from us next week. We're still alive, but pretty soon, if not next week, we'll have something new coming for you.
For sure. Awesome, beautiful people. Take care.
Dopamine swipe, follow us like double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.